Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Becc Holland. I'm the head of sales development at Chorus.ai, and today I have the privilege of having the wonderful Raanani on with me. He's the CEO and founder of Chorus. You want to give a little intro, a little tidbit?
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so thanks for joining me today. We wanted to cover the 7 deadly sins of messaging. So I feel like a lot in the SDR community, it's all about what to do. And so we just wanted to give a comprehensive list and 7 different principles of things what not to do throughout the 7 deadly sins. So to do that, I wanted to ask you unprompted some questions to get through these principles. So let's start off with principle number 1. Okay, Roy, so if you were to meet former President Barack Obama, you were thinking, okay, I'm going to meet him at 2 o'clock for whatever purpose. When you met him the first time live, would you be erring on the side of being too formal with him or erring on the side of being too casual and silly with him?
I would err on the side of being formal.
So would I. Why would you do that?
You just don't know. You know very little about the person when you're starting out, and I feel like very little downside to starting it out professional.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to our prospects, a lot of times we want to build rapport with someone. And so the way that we do that is we're reaching out to them and trying to be a little too casual or too silly. A great couple of examples are opening with saying, "Hey, Roy," as opposed to saying hi, or sending over gifts, or sending over the list of "you must have been swallowed by a shark," or, off on an island partying somewhere, or not value conversation intelligence and what your reps are saying on the phone. So the goal typically that I see there is, you want to build rapport, but people are trying, or SDRs a lot of times are trying to do it, by being a little too casual, too silly. So that's the first sin to avoid. Sin number 2. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever gotten an email from an SDR and AE where they say, "I'd like to, I'm just circling back with this"?
Yep.
Have you ever gotten an email from an SDR AE says, "I'm just following up on this"?
Yes.
Have you ever gotten an email from an SDRA that says, "I know you're busy, but"?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you feel when they do that?
I archive the email.
Okay, and why do you archive the email?
Most of the time, and I think this is true for most executives, you're very rarely in front of your computer.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the emails that I get are going to be on mobile.
Yeah.
I'm walking around, and so the first line of the email is almost as important as the subject line.
Yeah.
And so if I see something like that, it triggers pattern recognition that this is a sales email. It's somebody cold. It's somebody who doesn't know anything about my business.
Yeah.
And I candidly don't even get to the rest of the email a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're not alone. So a lot of people, we want to avoid any kind of wasted text of if you could strike through that portion of the email. Typically, people just want you to get to the point of hey, what do you need? The higher you are up in the chain, the less time that you have. And so as SDRs or AEs, I know we want to build rapport by saying, "I know you're busy, but typically a decision maker just wants you to get straight into the meat of it."
The best way to build rapport with me if I don't know you is to tell me something I don't know about my business.
That's great.
And go from there.
Yeah, that's great. So on to sin number 3. So Roy, if I were to open an email with you and I were to just say, if you were to get a cold email and it said Roy, comma, and then went into the email, how would you be feeling?
I would assume that it's from the IRS or maybe an attorney or something like that, and I was in trouble.
Yeah, and why would you think that?
Because just saying somebody's name is very formal to me.
Yes.
And it's a bit of an authoritative, imperative type of tone.
Exactly.
And so I would expect that from, again, somebody very, very formal. That might mean that I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So it would immediately put me a little bit on alert.
Yeah, exactly. I think it puts a tone of this is an authority, or this is like a super high importance email, or maybe a commanding email. Of when I get that, I would think, someone, it's like my mom that's sending Becc, you need to do this. It's someone that's in authoritative position. So I see a lot of SDRs, opening with just their name, comma, or saying something even as small as let me know what times work for you. Anytime that you're commanding your prospect, you're basically telling them something to do as if you're the authority over them. So it triggers them into the child ego and makes them want to rebel against what you're saying. So we have to be careful of doing that one. Okay, so principle number 4. Roy, if I came up to you and you are in fact a decision maker, and I said, "Hey, my name's Becc, I'm with Chorus," and you weren't the CEO. "Hey, my name's Becc, I'm with Chorus. We're a sales platform, on and on. If you were to buy, are you the decision maker on this deal? If you are the decision maker, what do you feel like inherently?
It's a little bit like when I get a cold call and then somebody asks me, "Are you Roy Raanani?"
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to give them that information because I don't know what they're going to do with it.
Yeah.
So it also makes me a little bit defensive and just saying, okay, why do you want to know? Do we have a relationship? What is this going to be used for? Might it be used against me?
Yeah.
Like, give me some context.
Yeah.
And so it would be a little bit off-putting if I immediately got that.
Exactly. So let's transition so if you are the decision maker, it doesn't feel good. Let's transition to, let's say you're not the decision maker in actuality. If I come up to you and I say, "Hi, my name's Becc, I'm with Chorus and we do this. Are you the decision maker on sales decisions?" What are you feeling if you're not the decision maker?
If I wasn't the decision maker and I was more junior, then probably one of two things. Either I lie about it because I want to make myself seem more important, and so that's not the information that you want, obviously. Or I might be a little bit embarrassed that I'm not, and I might think, well, is she going to think less of me? Now I'm not as important. Is she just trying to get from me to, somebody else in my organization? But either way, I don't think I feel very good about it.
Bingo. So in either case scenario, if you're talking to someone who's a decision maker or who is not a decision maker, it puts them either on edge or even worse, it insults them and makes them feel like they're not valid within the sales process. So in no case scenario would I recommend questioning, whether that person is a decision maker or not within the process.
So what's a better way of doing that?
I would flip that question too. What have you seen in the market? What's a better way for you to do that from your perspective?
I've seen if you ask something like, when you've bought software like this in the past, who's been involved in that process?
Yeah. That's a great question. I've never heard a phrase like that's actually a great question. So there you go, folks. That's the way to find out tease out the information you need without questioning their authority. Principle number 5. Okay, so Roy, if I were to come up to you and say, that is a terrible shirt, what are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling like, why are you saying this to me?
Yeah.
Feeling pretty bad.
Yeah. So, but I didn't. Why? Because I didn't insult you. I insulted your shirt.
Because this shirt, I think, I don't remember either I bought it or my wife bought it, but either way, I made the decision to put it on this morning.
Right.
So you are basically insulting me through a back channel.
Via decisions.
Yeah.
So a lot of times whenever you insult someone's decisions, it's even more powerful than insulting them directly. So just like it's, if I were to say that's a great shirt, it makes you feel good. If I were to say that's a bad shirt, it makes you feel bad because your decisions are essentially your resume, especially the higher up that you go in the food chain of like you're an executive vice president, you're markered based on the decisions that you make within the business process. So insulting the prospect and making them feel not okay. How I've seen this in the market is that you go to someone and you say, I notice that you're using our competitor, and you start mudslinging against the competitor. And if you're talking to the right person, typically you're talking to someone who chose that competitor and made that decision to purchase them. So I would always say avoiding that. Or another example is I see this a lot later in sequences of SDRs. You reach out and you say, "Hi Roy, I've tried reaching out to you 7 or 8 different times and you haven't simply responded. Like, I've basically done everything I can. You must not value data or whatever. So like, see ya." And so their intent is to follow up and make people aware of like, hey, I've tried doing 7 or 8 things, but instead of taking accountability of that being their fault that the outreach wasn't that compelling, they're basically putting it on their prospect. So as a final step in the breakup email, they're actually making their prospect not want to respond to them because they make them feel like they did something bad.
And I would argue that's actually 2 deadly sins because it's also wasted text.
Yeah,
it's I don't care what you write after I've tried to reach out to you 7 times because that's adding no value to me.
Totally.
So chances are it's not going to make it past my first screen.
So from what I've seen, I couldn't agree more. From what I've seen, it's prospects. When prospects don't respond, it's not because they're a bad person. It's because we weren't compelling enough to say something to get them to want to come on the phone. So if I'm sending a breakup email that says, I've reached out 7 times and you weren't a nice enough person to reach back out to me, it's like a double bingo, and it makes them say like, okay, archive is the best case scenario in this. So on to number 6. If I were to, let's pretend that I met you at a party on last Friday, and I come up to you and you don't remember me, I'm super forgettable. And I say, hey, Roy, we met last Friday at the party. You don't remember my name, do you? How do you feel right now?
Ooh, embarrassed, stupid.
Yeah, you feel so.
Not too good.
Do you want to talk to me further after you feel this way?
It's embarrassing. That's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to overcome.
Right.
So if I could get out of the situation, I would probably try to get out of it.
Right, bingo. So where I've seen this a lot of times in the sales process is we're making our prospects feel stupid, and we're unintentionally doing it a lot of times within the demo process or even on a cold call. We give them our kind of 30-second commercial, and then we close with the line of, does that make sense? And so does that make sense? We were checking for comprehension, but instead we're asking the prospect a really touchy question on like, are you understanding what I'm saying? So a good way to say that instead is, am I making any sense? So instead of...
So it's on, if there's an issue, it's on me that I didn't do a great job explaining the concept, not on you for understanding it.
Yeah, bingo. The onus is on me to communicate versus you to understand. So we always want to make sure that we aren't asking our prospects questions that make them feel like they inherently don't know something, but are asking them compelling questions that makes us get to know their business better so that they want to respond.
Give me one or two other examples. How would that apply to a cold call?
I have seen a lot of SDRs ask, do you know who we are, or do you know what I do? And if the prospect does know what you do, they're like, yeah, so. And if the prospect doesn't know what you do, then they're like, it puts them in this chair of not empowerment or knowledge, but they're kind of on the chase on the cold call of trying to figure out like, okay, I'm requiring a cold prospector to gain a piece of knowledge as opposed to me just adding that value up front.
That's a great point. So it's almost like ask questions where you know the answer, or at least you know the possible answers,
right,
and make sure that every one of them doesn't lead to somebody feeling like they have to admit something they don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been on calls before where somebody might ask me a statistic about our business, and even though we track that metric, the likelihood of me having it on me when I get a cold call in traffic is 0.
Right.
And so I felt that way, and you might just make something up and say, well, it's actually not that bad. It's like, let's just move on.
Yeah, so I think I think that's a really interesting point. Half of what I try and achieve on cold calls with SDRs is, adding value and knowing their buyer persona, but the other half is making it psychologically easy for your buyer to like you so you can build, rapport, not in asking like, hey, I noticed that there's this ship picture, do you like boats or whatever, and being cheesy, but more so of making your outreach super approachable and making them want to respond psychologically. So the last and final deadly sin out of the 7, Roy, I'm of course going to lead with a question.
Okay.
If I were to walk up to you, or we just meet, I'm like, hi, my name's Becc, and you're like, tell me a little about yourself. Why don't we role play that? Like, hi, my name's Becc.
Becc, nice to meet you, Roy.
Hi, Roy. Nice to meet you too.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about me. Well, I'm pretty awesome. I have a great job. I'm crushing it at the company. My CEO used to love me before this. My work's great. My family really likes me, likes having me around. I'm crushing it in the gym.
Okay, let's pause. Let's pause right there. So immediately, I'm going to say like, okay, first of all, there's no way this person's as perfect as they're making themselves sound.
Right.
And number 2, psychologically, even though I'm a very positive person, I think I would start to look for things, like I would look for mistakes.
Right.
Right? If it were an email, I'd look for typos, I'd look for formatting errors. Like you'd look for something to say like, see, there's no way that you're that perfect.
Bingo. So I think a lot of people don't think that translates to business, and where I've seen it deployed on the phone is people want to build rapport by talking well of themselves. So they're like, we're the number 1 in this space. We're doing all these awesome things. Me. We're working with great companies, and they're great because of me. So we want to they're focusing that attention on glorifying themselves and who they are. When if I'm aggressive on anything within outreach, I want to be aggressive on knowing my buyer. I want to be aggressive on the amount of research that I do towards them. And I want to be aggressive on turning that call into, let's not talk about Chorus before I know anything about you. So I've been asked a lot of times live on site of like, hey, what do you guys do? And I typically say like, hey, I'd hate to be a sales platform that makes reps better without asking any kind of questions about you first and just blind pitching. Like, tell me a little bit about your world. And then like, if we can fit in, then I'll tell you, where I think that we could add some value. So I typically do a lot of digging, and I try not to make this a me show and try and turn it into a show all about the prospect. So That's it. That is the 7 deadly sins. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks so much for coming on today.